I can't believe what's happening in Ashbourne right now. Three absolutely explosive pieces of news are going to change everything you thought about the Commanders season. We're talking about moves that range from the development of our future to decisions that could define if we make it to the playoffs or end up watching TV at home again. First, our rookie Josh Conley Jr. is being primed for something massive you can't even imagine. And when you find out Peter's master plan, you'll understand why this pick was brilliant. Second, Marshon Lattimore is under such pressure that if he doesn't handle it well, it's going to cost this organization dearly, and I have information that will surprise you. And third, the pass rush we so desperately need could come at the most unexpected moment. But will it be enough to compete against the Cowboys, Eagles, and Giants? If you thought Adam Peters had finished surprising us, you're completely crazy. Because what's coming will determine if this season is historic or if we continue being the same old team. Stay tuned until the end because the last piece of news is going to blow your minds and completely change your perspective on this defense. Let's start with something many fans aren't seeing, but that I believe is crucial for the future of this franchise. Josh Conley Jr., our first-round pick, isn't just another tackle. This organization is grooming him to be our left tackle of the future, which means they're already thinking about Laremy Tunsil's departure. Do you know what this really means? I'll tell you this. Conley has played all of his 28 starts in Oregon at left tackle. It's no coincidence that Peter selected him knowing that Tunsil has just 2 years left on his contract, with guaranteed money only until 2020-5. But let me explain the financial genius of this move. Tunsil counts $80 million against the salary cap this year, but in 2026, that number rises to $21.35 million. And here's the interesting part. It's essentially a team option because there's no guaranteed money. The Texans already absorbed the dead money from the signing bonus when they traded him to us. So we have all the control. Now let me ask you, why would Peters pay 2-day 2 picks for just one season of Tunsil if he didn't have a long-term plan? The answer is clear as day. Tunsil is going to ask for nearly $30 million in his next contract, and that amount could be too much for an organization that needs to allocate the salary cap smartly. And you know what the current market for elite left tackles is? Trent Williams is making $23 million a year. Tyron Smith signed for $20 million. And Laremy Tunsil himself is among the highest paid at the position. If he asked for $30 million annually in 2027, we'd be talking about one of the biggest contracts for a tackle in NFL history. But here's the most intelligent part of Peters' plan. Andrew Wiley accepted a pay cut this year, entering the last year of his contract. That tells me the organization has already communicated to him that this is his last season as a starter. Why would they do that? Because they need the space to develop Conley Jr. The plan is brilliant, and I believe Peters is executing it perfectly. Look at the timeline. Conley will play right tackle in 2026 after Wiley leaves, gaining valuable experience on the NFL offensive line. Then, in 2027, when Tunsil potentially leaves for financial reasons, Conley will move to his natural position at left tackle. This reminds me of the plan the Packers had with David Bakhtiari or the Ravens with Ronnie Stanley. Developing your own franchise left tackle is infinitely cheaper and more effective in the long run than paying massive contracts in free agency every few years. And do you know what's most impressive about all this? Tunsil himself is praising the rookie. He says he's going to be a dog in this league, highlighting his mobility, flexibility, and intelligence. When a veteran All-Pro talks like that about a rookie, it tells me we're witnessing something special developing before our eyes. But it's not just Tunsil who's impressed. Reports from John Team of ESPN indicate that Conley has shown exceptional movement skills during spring's padless practices. His bend capability, which is critical for a left tackle, is impressing the coaches. Do you know why that's so important? Because hip flexibility and the ability to bend are the hardest traits to teach a tackle. You can improve technique, can develop strength, but that natural flexibility is something you either have or don't have. And Conerly clearly has it. Now, let's talk about his development path. Conerly is primarily practicing with the second team, which means he's going to have time to adjust to the NFL game without the immediate pressure of being a starter. This is exactly what a rookie tackle needs, especially one coming from the Pac-12. The difference in speed and power between college football and the NFL is massive, especially for tackles. In Oregon, Conerly faced good pass rushers, but not of the caliber of Micah Parsons, Khalil Mack, or T.J. Watt. Giving him a year to develop while learning from Tunsil is perfect development. This is the long-term planning we never had under the old administration. Dan Snyder would have paid $30 million to Tunsil and then wondered why he had no salary cap space for other positions. Peters is thinking 3 steps ahead, building a sustainable dynasty. And here's something many aren't considering. If Conerly develops as we expect, suddenly we have one of the youngest and cheapest left tackles in the league, protecting Jaden Daniels during his most important years. That frees up massive money to invest in defense, weapons, and depth. If that surprises you, wait to hear this, because now we're going to talk about a player who has all the organization's pressure on him. And if he doesn't respond, we could be looking at one of the costliest trades in recent Commanders history. Martian. Lattimore needs to prove that the trade of 3 picks, including a 3rd rounder, was worth it. And I tell you this with total honesty, so far he hasn't. The statistics don't lie, folks. Just 4 tackles in 2 regular season games after the trade. 4 tackles in 2 games. But let's dig deeper into these numbers because the situation is even more complicated than it seems. Lattimore played against the Titans and the Cowboys after the trade, and in both games, the numbers were disappointing. Against Tennessee, he recorded only 2 tackles, and against Dallas, which has one of the best offenses in the league, he also had TWO tackles. Sure, he had a better performance in the playoffs with 15 tackles in 3 games, but do you think that's enough to justify what we paid for him? I don't think so. Especially when considering he has $18 million against the salary cap this year and $18.5 million next year. Now let me ask you, what happened in those games against Tampa Bay and Philadelphia where they constantly targeted him? Because those were the games where we really saw what Lattimore was made of under pressure, and the results were mixed. Against Tampa Bay in the playoffs, Tom Brady was no longer there, but Baker Mayfield and that. Bucs offense knew exactly how to attack. Mike Evans and Chris Godwin were key factors in that game. And although Lattimore didn't allow catastrophic big plays, he didn't dominate as we expected from an elite cornerback, and against Philadelphia, that was the game that really worried. MEAJ Brown and Devonta Smith are exactly the kind of receivers Lattimore is supposed to neutralize. These are precision route players with good hands and high football IQ. If you can't dominate them, who can you dominate? The reality is that Lattimore has played only 26 games in the last 3 years combined. 26 games in 3 years. Do you know what that means for a cornerback who is supposed to be a central piece of our defense? Let's put this in perspective. In 2022, Lattimore played only 10 games. In 2023, it was 10 games as well. And in 2024, including his 2 appearances with us, he played just 6 games in total. That's not availability. That's disability. And do you know what the biggest problem is? Hamstring injuries? Lattimore has struggled with recurring hamstring issues, and that's an injury that can fundamentally affect how a cornerback plays. When you can't fully trust your explosiveness and change of direction against elite receivers like CeeDee Lamb or Jay Brown, you're in trouble. Peters was smart to structure the contract without guaranteed money in the last 2 years. If Lattimore doesn't perform at the expected level, we can cut him after this season with no dead money on the salary cap. That's the kind of move that protects the organization, but also puts immense pressure on the player. And do you know why this is critical? Because in the NFC East, we face CeeDee Lamb twice a year, A.J. Brown twice a year, and other elite receivers regularly. If Lattimore can't cover these players, our entire defense falls apart. Think about this. CeeDee Lamb had 135 receptions for 1,749 yards last season. A.J. Brown, when healthy, is one of the most physical and explosive receivers in the league. These players aren't going to respect Lattimore's reputation. They're going to attack any weakness they see. And here's something many fans aren't considering: the chemistry with Dan Quinn. Lattimore has never played in Quinn's defensive system before. Learning new calls, new coverages, new terminology. All of that takes time. And when you have limited time due to injuries, that learning curve becomes even steeper. The training camp starting on July 22nd is going to be definitive for his future with this organization. Either he proves he's the player we thought we got, or Peters will have to quickly look for alternatives. And do you know what's most concerning? That we're relying on a 28-year-old player with an extensive injury history to be our shutdown corner in a division where you need to be able to match up against elite weapons. That's not a position of strength. If Lattimore can't stay healthy and play at an all-pro level, then suddenly our safeties will need to constantly help in coverage, which affects our ability to stop the run and generate pressure. It's a domino effect that could destroy our entire defense. But that's nothing compared to what's coming, because now we're going to talk about the position that worries me the most, and that could entirely define our season. The pass dash rush dot. This is what's driving me crazy. Ben Stanek from The Athletic is our EPORTING that the organization wants to wait until the first week of training camp to decide if they need to add another pass rusher. Are they expecting players like Javon Kinlaw and Dietrich Wise Jr. to solve our pass rush problems? I'll tell you this. While the Cowboys have Micah Parsons generating 14 sacks last season, the Eagles have a defensive line that generated 70 sacks as a team. And the Giants are improving with Brian Burns and Kayvon Thibodeau. We're waiting to see what happens with players who have never proven to be consistent pass rushers in this league. Let's analyze exactly what we have right now, because the numbers don't lie. Darren Payne had 6.5 sacks last season, which is fine for a defensive tackle. Dorrance Armstrong had 5 sacks, which is decent but not game-changing. Johnny Newton, our second-round pick last year, showed flashes but needs development. And our new acquisitions. Javon Kinlaw comes from San Francisco with a history of injuries and inconsistent production. In his 4 NFL seasons, his best year was 2021 with 3.5 sacks. Dietrich Wise Jr. comes from New England with 4 sacks last season. Eddie Goldman is basically a run stuffer at this point in his career. Now let me ask you, how many more years are we going to wait to have a dominant pass rush? Because Jaden Daniels can be the best quarterback in the world, but if we can't pressure the opposing quarterback, we're going to lose important games. The situation with Trey Hendrickson seems dead, according to reports. But do you know what? There are still options available in the market that could completely transform this defense. Do you remember what happened last season when we couldn't generate pressure in critical moments? Specifically, do you remember the game against the Eagles where Jalen Hurts had a clean time to find A.J. Brown on deep routes? Or against the Cowboys when Dak Prescott had all the time in the world to dissect our secondary? That can't happen again if we want to be serious contenders. And here are the numbers that have me worried. Last season as a team, we generated only 32 sacks. To put that in perspective, the Eagles had 70, the Cowboys 54, and even the Giants with their struggling offense had 40-5.30-2 sacks in the entire season. That put us in the bottom 5 of the NFL in team sacks. Do you think we can compete for a championship with those numbers? I don't think so. The combination of Darren Payne, Dorrance Armstrong, and Johnny Newton has potential. I won't deny that. But potential doesn't win games in December and January. We need real production, and I believe Peters knows it. And do you know what the biggest problem is? That we're too dependent on getting home with our front 4. When you can't generate pressure with 4 pass rushers, you have to bring extra bodies, which leaves your secondary vulnerable. Against quarterbacks like Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, and Daniel Jones, who are all mobile and can extend plays, that's a recipe for disaster. If by the first week of training camp there are no moves, it means the organization is convinced that what they have is enough. But if I'm honest with you, we are way behind our divisional rivals in this critical area. And do you know what's most frustrating? That fans keep asking for reinforcements in the pass rush season after season, and every year we're told that what we have will be enough. But then we see Dak Prescott, Jalen Hurts, and Daniel Jones getting clean time in the pocket against us. Ben Standig mentions that the organization wants to see how the new personnel meshes with the holdovers. But how much evaluation time do we need? These players aren't mysterious rookies. We know exactly what they're capable of based on their track records. Kinlaw has been in the league for 4 years. If he hasn't developed consistent pass rush ability by now, what makes us think he's suddenly going to break through? Wise Jr. is a solid player, but he's never been a double-digit sack guy. Goldman is what he is, a run stuffer. And do you know what worries me more? That we're relying on Johnny Newton to take a massive leap in his second year. Yes, he showed flashes as a rookie, but expecting him to be our primary interior pass rusher is asking a lot from a player who is still learning. The professional game, Peters never settles, and I believe if he sees an opportunity, he's going to act. But time is running out, and every day that goes by without improvements in the pass rush is a day our rivals are getting further ahead. If we don't make moves by training camp, make no mistake, Peters will seek alternatives during the season. Because he knows what I know, what you know. In this division, if you can't pressure the quarterback, you're not going to win. Let's recap all this, because the complete situation is more complex than it seems on the surface. We have a bright future with Connolly Jr. being groomed as our franchise left tackle, which is excellent long-term planning. We have a massive question with Lattimore needing to prove his worth after a costly trade. And we have a real urgency to improve our pass rush before it's too late. But when I put all of this in divisional context, the picture becomes even clearer. The Cowboys have Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Trevon Diggs. The Eagles have a defensive line that can generate pressure with 4 guys and a secondary that can cover. The Giants have Brian Burns, Kayvon Thibodeau, and are improving. And us? We have potential, question marks, and hopes. That doesn't win games in the NFC East. These 3 situations are going to define whether the Commanders make the definitive jump towards being legitimate contenders, or if we continue to be a team that relies on luck and Jaden Daniels' individual brilliance to keep us competitive. I guarantee you that in the coming weeks, we're going to have more explosive news on these topics. The season is approaching, and Peters is not going to leave any stone unturned to ensure we have the best roster possible. Do you believe that Connolly Jr. can be our franchise left tackle from day one? Do you think Lattimore is finally going to justify what we paid for him? And are you confident that our current pass rush can compete against the best offenses in the league? Let me know in the comments what you think about these 3 situations. Hit LIKE if you think Peters should add another pass rusher before training camp. Subscribe if you trust that Lattimore is going to shine this season. And comment on which of these 3 pieces of news has you most excited or worried. This community is a family, and I want all of us to be part of these conversations that are going to define the future of our team. If you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Because tomorrow we're going to have more exclusive analysis on the Commanders that you won't find anywhere else. And remember, hail to the Redskins.